Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Her Story, Heals, Healing the Inner Child. I have some very amazing guests on here that are going to introduce themselves in a second. But first, I want to say I had this, I wanted to do this in person, but then my sister Hakina, I call her Bree, um, wrote a book that inspired me to push it even now, like soon, right now. And she's going to tell you more about her book. I want to introduce her first, and then she's going to go from there. Hakima.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I do apologize up front if it's kind of delays or understand in a new modem today. Um, thank you all to me and you all for sharing your time with us tonight.
You breaking up, Bree. All right, while she get her thing together, I'm gonna go ahead and go through the panel. So next we have our sister Natasha. You'll see her name on here as Natasha. You'll probably hear me say Nix because I do not call her Natasha. She is over our community service uh, section of Alpha Pi Delta Sorority Incorporated. And this whole event is presented by Alpha Pi Delta Sorority Incorporated. Nix, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Natasha. I go by Tasha. I'm the owner and CEO of Handmade Crowns by Tasha, founded in North Carolina. It's been established for about 5 years. I've been doing hair professionally for about 9 years. And yeah, that's all.
Don't say that's all because that's a lot, baby. Okay.
I was gonna say that's a mouthful and it's a lot. That's
All
great.
right, so I'm gonna go straight across the road. Next, we have my sister Megan Baker. Baby, she can sing, okay? When I tell you she can sing, she can sing. Introduce yourself, sis.
Hello, my name is Megan J. Baker. Some people call me MJ. I am a master wealth strategist, money mindset coach, artist, singer, songwriter. You name it, I can do it outside of fixing your plumbing. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all so much for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting the invite. All right, next, y'all probably know her as Joy the Coach, as my wife, but I'm gonna go ahead and let her introduce herself. Go ahead, babe.
Well, good evening, and I'm a little underdressed compared to everybody on the panel, but that's fine. I am Joy, the coach. I am your millionaire, your mystic, your mindset transformer. I am, I don't even know what to add, but if you need, I am your life coach, your business consultant. I am here to help you become the millionaire you are destined to be. And I am so glad to be on the show today.
Thank you. Next, we have my sister Ami. She is a licensed therapist. Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself, sis.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I'm Me Sadler. I'm located in Nashville, Tennessee. My day job is as the executive director of Miriam's Promise. We do pregnancy and adoption counseling as well as adoption support. I'm also a licensed therapist, work mainly with children and youth, adolescents, and couples. Especially those who are identified as part of the LGBTQA plus community, because sometimes you need an affirming ear. So I do lots of other things, but professionally, those are my big two.
And then we have my sister and best friend. She is a psych nurse. Her name is Amber. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I mean, you did a great job right there. I love that. Um, good evening. Good evening. So I am Amber. I am a nurse that's by trade, of course, and specializes in trauma in the ER as well as adolescent psych, ages ranging from 8 years old to 17 years old. So I am happy to be a part of this because we all have a story and we all are healing from something. So I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Bree is trying to get her come back in. I know one of the first questions we wanted to ask is, what is trauma in um your definition? And I want to go the same way I introduced you guys. So Nix, you would go first.
Me personally, I think that trauma is associated with your past. And pretty much anything that kind of triggers you in any type of way, bad or negatively, things that you're used to doing, it feels comfortable of doing, is trauma. And we're not defined of our past. Tomorrow's always it's not always promised, but it's an opportunity to change that. So um trauma is just what it is. It's negative, but it can be fixed.
Megan.
So I believe that what I believe trauma is basically things that happen to us in our life. Anything that possibly could impact us, just as Natasha said, anything that can hit us negatively, affect us negatively, and that could be somebody snatching your lollipop, when you were younger. Hey, my brother stole my Snickers bar when I was a young girl, and that made me not trust people with my food. That's trauma. So it can go from something as simple as that to something much bigger. But again, I do agree with her that it can be changed and we can change our stories.
Joy.
For me, trauma is based off of each person's perspective
Mhm.
because everybody, and I'm just speaking, I'm gonna say allegedly, but most people categorize trauma for anything that's traumatic, and those can be two different things. So it all depends on how you accept that situation, whether it's actual trauma, because some levels of trauma can have lasting impact, but you could be traumatized and it doesn't necessarily have a lasting impact. And so then therefore, to me, trauma is all based off of that person's experience, their individual experience, and their own individual perspective. And as an example, what we went through as Gen Xers, a Gen Zer would think that would be trauma, but it's not.
Right.
It was raised. It was the way that we were was raised in that era to survive. Where to now it is very traumatic, and it could be trauma to be yelled at, to be spanked, to be done anything to anybody that's after a Gen Xer. So to me, it's based off of each person's perspective. However, I don't feel that trauma and a traumatic experience are always the same.
Okay.
So
I,
there's different ways to define trauma. Clinically, it's that emotional response. And what a lot of people don't really think about is trauma starts before you have any level of cognition. Trauma can start in the womb. If your
Yes.
mother had a traumatic experience while pregnant, you live with that trauma.
Yeah.
And there's the acute trauma that is like instant, like Joy, you were saying, that one incident that kind of sticks out, or like MJ, you were saying, someone stealing your lollipop, that can be like acute trauma. There's chronic trauma, which a lot of
Right.
us, being women of color, just our existence can be traumatic. And then there's the more complex layered trauma. So it's a lot of different things. And I don't think we can't get rid of the trauma, but we can learn how to live and move beyond the trauma. Um, and there's also this idea of generational trauma, that
Mhm.
our parents experience things that we live through that impact and change how we move through the world. So like trauma is this big thing that I think sometimes is overemphasized, but on the flip side, in some cases, not talked about enough. So it's a big thing.
Amber.
As she was saying, I was thinking about the same thing, how there's different layers of what trauma looks like. And it's, for me, it's what I know of it as is it's a response, and where it can affect the ability to process different emotions and how
Yeah.
it is associated to that. And as Joy was saying, yes, a traumatic event may not have lingering trauma within you, but it's still a traumatic experience that you won't forget. So it's how
Yeah.
you cope through that, how you get through that, how you process that. And those different layers of trauma also it plays a part in how you have to attack it, how you have to address it in the form of how are you going to heal through it. And that is what trauma is. Anything for me that is going to bring an emotional response that then can turn into a physical response brings trauma. That is what trauma is to me.
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Bree, can you introduce yourself and then give your response for trauma?
Yeah. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I have to apologize. I'm getting a new modem, so that's my issue today. So I apologize up front. Um, I really I agree with all the responses. Joy made a good point, which is actually what kind of led me to dealing with it in the way that I did. I'm a Gen Xer too. Think about my generation. I always say it would probably take my generation probably be the hardest generation to heal. Not the hardest, but probably the beginning of the hardest and going back from us. Because like she said, what we think that's normal behavior. That's how we was raised. We was raised to survive.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And when I deal with people within my generation and talking about trauma, it's very hard for us to equate that we were psychologically, emotionally, and mentally and verbally traumatized and abused because for all of us that was our norm. So go through the things that you experience and ask yourself, okay, so this was my norm, but was this normal okay? And for our generation, we think that it's okay because we can fill stadiums across the world with Gen Xers, and all of us would think that how we survived. Be clear about the word. Survived was normal. But when I began to heal, and I began to heal not only as a person, but began to heal so that I would as a mother, I had to go back and look at my childhood and not just my individual childhood, my childhood of my whole generation. We think getting a whooping, we think getting yelled at, we think those things are okay because it's how we are. And everybody in our generation thinks it's okay. But in reality, the generations after us, they're the one reminding us that's not okay. It's not okay. It was traumatic for a lot of kids. I know I had a few friends that committed suicide for that particular reason because those things for them were not was levels of trauma they could not deal with. And at the same time, when we're thinking about trauma, we have to understand, like I think Amy said, there's levels of trauma in when you're dealing in mental health and you're dealing with understanding. You have psychological, emotional, verbal, physical trauma. So anything that affects you and it allows you to grow into not being able to function in relationships, communities, societies, those things were traumatic in that time frame. So I posed a question before I wrote the book, what is trauma? Because talking to a lot of people, we really don't even understand what trauma is. Because like I said, for some of us, that was normal. That was being black. So I'm not traumatized. I can go to work, I can function. But when you go down different layers of talking to people, how do you function in your relationships? How do you function in your parentingships and your friendships? You see the effects of the verbal, psychological, and emotional trauma that passed down generation to generation. We just don't feel like it's trauma because it was our normal society. It was a black thing. That's just how you was raised.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I agree with everybody, so I'm not even gonna go in it because we have plenty of definitions that equals up what trauma is. But my first question, and I'm going to ask MJ first. Um, how does healing oneself? No, no, no. I'm sorry. What challenges might women face when trying to break generational cycles, and how can they overcome that?
I think some of I can speak from my experience. The biggest challenge is deprogramming, coming to like habits that you think, as Hakina spoke on, things that you think are normal, and then one day you wake up and you can't move your legs because there's so much trauma in your body, and or you're sick and you don't realize that this is due to stress that has accumulated over time. And so I think that the hardest part is realizing that what you deemed as normal, like my mother working multiple jobs to pay her bills, that is not normal. That is just what society has told us. Hey, you got to get a job, you got to get many jobs to pay all of your many bills, right? Or writing bad checks. That is not normal. You know, so deprogramming those things and first of all, facing the fact that how I am is harming me and that I have to address it. But the hard part is realizing that our habits are not always good for us. And I feel like that's was my challenge. One of the biggest challenges that I've had and other women that I've spoken to is coming to the grips of those things. Yeah.
I like that. Amber, same question, please, ma'am.
I mean, honestly, I agree. There are a lot of times when you look back and for instance, as she has stated as an example, a bad check, when we think we're surviving. We are
Yeah.
raised to be strong and we're in survivor mode, and whatever we
Mhm.
have to do to make sure these lights are on, that's what it is. Not
Yeah.
realizing, or not in the moment realizing the impact it's going to have in 5 to 7 days when you have all those extra fees in your checking account. Now you got to
Right.
recover, right? And recover is not just in the financial realm either, because now you got to realize there's another area in your life that is now affected by the habits in which you display.
Right.
So if you start maneuvering in a different manner, that is more in a more healthier manner, and it may not be an example that you're used to seeing displayed in people that you look up to or that you were raised by, it's all about rewriting, resetting. And I used to say all the time, I used to watch the Cosby Show, like most. And in my mind, I'm like, that's the family. That is the
Yes.
family dynamic that I am supposed to be in, I am supposed to have. And of
Yes.
course, life does not work that way. Let's be clear. I worked hard. I put the work in different areas of my life, but there are still some very much learned behaviors that came with my life.
Yeah.
So those are pieces of my puzzle that I have to reprogram and redirect. So that way I don't pass it down to my children and then my grandchildren. So
Now I'm gonna say when I read that question, it took me to when you start doing something outside of when you start breaking down generational traumas or habits, your
mm-hmm.
family will turn against you too because they're not
Oh,
used to you doing something different. Everybody's supposed to do the same thing, live the same way, be on the same
mm-hmm.
stuff. And the moment you start doing anything different than what the family has been used to, you
Right.
think better than them. So that's even more that you gotta.
Added on trauma right
Yeah,
there.
it's more layers because now you got to battle with like, am I better than them? Like, I'm not trying to be better than them,
No.
but I am trying to be better than you. Like I am. I don't
Right.
want to be. So yeah, I am. I'll take that. Joy the
She said,
coach,
I'll
what you
take that.
I need you to read it one more time.
got? So it says, what challenge might women face when trying to break generational cycles, and how can they overcome them?
Well, when it comes, I'm gonna deal with Black women. We are the most invisible group of people across the board. Well, whether it's in the church, whether it's in money, whether it's in corporate America. And the reason is because back then, when white men ran everything, then they wanted to give Black men 3/5. We wasn't included.
Yeah.
When white women were going after women's suffrage, we were not included. We are still always was on the back end. So we we had to learn to take being strong women to being women of strength,
Yeah.
utilizing those difficulties and discrepancies and disparities that we experience as a people, as a group,
Yeah.
to use that for our business. So one of the things we have, yes, we endured a lot, 100,000%. But I want to really focus the fact that we have a very natural, nature built part of us that it utilizes. It's a Black privilege that only Black women have.
Mm.
If we, so we can navigate those challenges by identifying what is your Black privilege, what is that unique perspective about you
Mm.
in your Black skin to do. And what people don't give us credit for, we can strategically navigate any situation. And because of that, we undervalue ourselves
Yeah.
because we don't see any equal value. Because on the workforce, we still make 12% under a white woman who makes 32% under a white man.
Yeah. Speak that.
When you come into, when it comes down to,
Real.
when it comes down to the fact that we hold the most doctorate and master's degree in a woman category, but we still have to justify our places to be there. So it takes us to not focus on those traumas, but to take those traumas and change the conversation around those traumas. Because if you really think about it, when anybody asks you what is your strength is your same weakness. It depends on how you use it. So if somebody asks me, what is your strength? And I say, I'm good at delegate. I'm good at multi. But then what's my weakness? Take on too much. It's the same thing. So you have to identify what is that challenge and make it your strength and use that to stand in what is naturally you as a Black woman.
Bree.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. I totally agree with that. The whole tagline for my business is "There's no healing without truth."
Mhm.
And I think at some point we always say, we don't want to have those questions. We don't want to talk about those things. We don't want to deal with those things. I think at this season, it's time to have those questions. But like, I think Amy said, the biggest thing for most people is being honest and being able to tell the truth about this was actually trauma. Because like Joy was saying, she will agree. In our generation, you can't say your parents are wrong. You That's automatic disrespect.
Mhm.
So, you have to get past the psychological things that's already there to be able actually to even tell the truth in the first place. And one of my main goals in helping my sisters and brothers heal is to be able to understand we need to have these conversations as we're doing now and have them with the understanding that we're not attacking anybody. We know we're not pointing fingers at anybody. We're not judging anybody. But if we do not have these conversations, if we don't talk about these things, then we cannot heal. And on top of that, if we don't have these conversations, we tend to think it's just us. No one understands what I'm going through. And I often say, if I can ever get my sisters in one room, all the ones I've mentored and coached over 35 years, we be in awe of how we share the same story, but different scenarios. So it's
100%.
conversations and to do it without judgment and to do it without anger and to most importantly do it without ego and to just understand that we need to have them. And as on this phone call, we need to be able to do this just for ourselves, but for the generation to come after us
Mhm.
at the same time.
Okay, I got a question based off of that, but I mean, you wanna jump on that question?
Oh, absolutely. So I think the thing that is underlying all of this is we don't heal trauma until we acknowledge trauma. And people hate that piece of it. If you say it, it makes it real. If it's real, it's something you have to deal with. And a lot of what we think is our personality is a trauma response. Like that is not who you are. That is who you have had to be to survive.
And that's it.
So you can name that. You can never move beyond that. Like my mom and I butt heads so much about my daughter. My daughter is 18, about to be 19, and she talks back. If she is not understanding something, I need her to tell me that she's not understanding so we can have an understanding. It doesn't mean that she gets to run amok and do whatever, but if someone just tells you no for the sake of telling you no, you never learn how to move beyond that. You never know what the risk is. It's something you want to do because someone told you you can't do it. So if we want to break the generational curses, if we want to move beyond that, we have to deal with our own stuff. We have to unpack whatever we are carrying with us. We have to allow people to come in to be like, "Hey, sis, I don't think that's coming off the way you think it is. Like,
Yeah.
you need help, fantastic, but how do you ask for help without coming across as someone who is rude and entitled?" You need support. How do you say, I'm going to be vulnerable? Can I trust you with that? How do we learn how to be vulnerable? Because we have this idea, the stereotype of the strong Black woman, and it's literally killing us. So, like, we have to not listen to what our parents said about what happens in this house stays in this house.
Stays in the house.
No,
I just said that. Yeah.
sure cannot. That's not how this works.
Not it.
Because I need to tell somebody who knows more, who's smarter, who's whatever. I need somebody to help me unpack my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want to do that, I can't make you, but I don't have to carry it for you anymore.
That's
And I
right.
think that's when we start getting into like true healing and true work, is when we can say, yep, this happened. This hurt me. Doesn't matter what anyone else says is the norm, because the norm is just what enough people do to make you think it's reality.
It's reality. That's right.
I like that.
Perception becomes reality, and we have to break that idea, especially that ideology within Black women. You don't have to carry the load for everybody. You don't have to be the only person who is supportive. You can let people support you. So.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Next.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, MJ.
no, go ahead. Let's Natasha. She said.
Okay. I would say one of the biggest challenges for myself was definitely breaking generational curses. I knew what I wanted to do from a very early age, but it was not what everybody else wanted me to do. And, being in my own lane and saying, you know what, this is what I feel, this lane is where I feel comfortable, and I know I'm gonna make it, in this in my own lane. And not that I'm a prove to y'all that it's gonna work, but just trust me to know that it's gonna work for myself. And being a hairstylist is not ideal for the Black community. I don't know why, but it was a big stereotype in my generation. I'm 36. So I grew up, I was born in 89, grew up in the 90s. Everybody wanted to go to college to be doctors and lawyers, and that wasn't my lane. So just being sure of yourself was the biggest challenge. Being
Yeah.
making, not second guessing yourself, knowing that you can trust yourself and God, and you can just lead yourself to the promised land. You don't have to necessarily listen to everybody else and their perspective of life and how they wanted to live it. I'm like, y'all don't did what y'all needed to do. Watch me work. I might show you a different way.
Yeah.
And that was a big challenge.
Yeah.
All right, MJ, you had something you want to say, and I want to hear it.
I was just gonna say when when Amy was talking about the strong Black woman and it being hard for us to receive help, and I know that has been some deprogramming for me. I keep using this word deprogramming because I didn't realize until I moved away from my family, moved away from friends, hundreds of miles away, to move to Charlotte, North Carolina by myself, that I had a major issue with asking for help. And it was a struggle, like literally crying, like having a temper tantrum because I'm in a place where I cannot do it by myself. And working through that, you're not enough, you are a failure, those words that come through your head. And I had to say, and so that's where I started my process of asking, where did I get this from? Who taught me this? And one thing that my therapist, shout out to her, because she said, who was the person that you were around the most? Who raised you? And my mother never said, don't ask for help, but I never saw her ask for help. I always saw her struggling. And so working to come out of that mindset, that struggle is the new normal, that struggle is good, and realizing I don't like the struggle. I don't like to be like in a pinch. That's uncomfortable for me. Number one, I'm a big girl, so I need big space. You know what I mean? So it's like, baby, even if I lost 100 pounds, these titties and this ass gonna always need some room. So I can't be a pinch. Don't work for me.
I can relate.
No, you need me in a big space. That's what it is. You know, and so I'm making that example to say breaking free of that mentality of not needing help, of always being strong. No, I cannot carry your burden. I even tell my friends, hey, I ain't got room for you today. I only got room for me. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll let you know if I got room tomorrow. And be living in a space of that's okay for me to say that. And it's okay for me. And then having friends to say to me, I don't have room for your shit today. Don't call me about your problems.
Yeah.
And me being okay with not and take that and not taking offense to them. Excuse me. I didn't even ask if I could cut y'all.
You are fine.
You
You
okay,
are
honey?
fine. This is a safe place to do whatever you need to do.
We unpacking over here.
Okay.
Girl, keep
But
going.
needless to say, being okay with my friends not having space for me at that moment. And because they are Black women going through whatever they're going through. So I just wanted to kind of like pick it, that really triggered me. You know what I mean? In a
And to
good
go
way, in a good way, in a good way.
to go back to that, like my friends when I first started doing it thought I was crazy. But before I would call and start, my question was always, do you have the capacity to handle this conversation with me right now? Because I had friends who would call me and start dumping, and I'm so deep in my own stuff, I am buried in theirs now, and I don't see a way out. Because if someone says no, not right now, then if you want that respect, you have to give that respect. Like, cool, we'll talk about it later. Or sometimes I'll tell them, not in this moment, but send me a text, send me an email. I'll open it when I have the capacity to do so. Because I still want to be here for you. I still want to receive you. But I'm a therapist. I hear everybody's problem. I work with mothers who are trying to decide what to do with their babies. I'm working with families who don't know if they're ever going to have kids. And like I got everybody's stuff, and I don't always have space for anybody else's, but I need to be that person for them because sometimes you don't have anybody else. But when we call each other, the first question is, you got the capacity for me today? And yep, I do, or nope, I don't. And and not in a nice way. Like, we've trained each other how to deal with each other. And that's the other way that we start to move beyond things, is you have to teach people how to treat you.
That's right.
Teach people what's acceptable. Someone said it in the comments, healthy boundaries. You got to set them up because other people will ignore them every time unless you make them understand them.
Joy, you and that usher finger, please go.
Because that hand went from
Because the
raising to
church
the
is ready,
finger.
okay?
So, real quick, I mean, if you get a brand new baby boy, call us. But now, one thing that we haven't said is forgiveness. We struggle with forgiveness when we feel that we can justify why we're the way we are. That's one. And then forgiving ourselves because we didn't meet a mark. We set an unrealistic expectation for where we was. We set an unrealistic expectation because of where we wanted to be, and we didn't meet it. And now we didn't meet that timeline. We didn't meet that standard. And then we look on ourselves and we feel we're behind. We got a problem, and we beat ourselves up. But then also, on another note on forgiveness, now that is one of my main stories. And when my book about forgiveness come out, it is really centered around my mom and my dad, but mainly my mom. And I had to go through so many layers of forgiveness with her, just from the life experiences that we've had. But what helped me forgive her was I was able to see some of the stuff that she did to me done to her. And I said, I see where you got it from. I can forgive you for that because you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
When I saw my grandma do my mama the way she did me one day, I said, you couldn't even, I let that one slide. But now the other thing, you're going to eat that one. But I had to realize that even with my dad, when I started hearing his story, I said, I can see why I wasn't that priority, because you wasn't a priority. So you didn't know how to make nobody a priority. I get it. When he told me that, and about that self-sufficient thing, I self-sufficient because I refuse to depend on anybody. My dad told me when I was 10 years old, if you ever need anything, make me your last choice. And I remember never asking a soul for anything. I would rather lick on the same pack of noodles before I tell you I need anything.
Oh, Lord.
But the trauma response was I'm a clean hoarder because I can't say no to myself because I didn't have anything. So that was a trauma response. It was a response where I never told anybody else no because I don't never want you to feel the way I felt. So I couldn't say no to nobody. And I would go broke just so that you would have it.
Wow.
Writing them checks, yes, because if you ask me for it, I never said no.
No. Mm-hmm.
2020, the end of 2024 and 2025, in the 3 months that we've been in, it's been the most I've ever said no.
And I'm so proud of you.
I am too. I
I
was going to say, I'm
said no.
super.
And so we have to, and I had to forgive myself for not being able to say no because I was so tired.
Yeah.
Because it's like I didn't even realize that part about me. And going back to the whole clean hoarder thing, I had to go through the fact that I save food because I can't say no, because I know what it is not to have food, even though I'm not going to eat it later. It's going in that refrigerator. Or if I go to the store, I need these 5 packs of tuna in the package that can last 2 years because I know that I'm gonna be hungry one day, knowing I ain't been hungry since.
Yes. Oh my God. Joy,
But
that
Straight
is
in
real.
survival
pound
mode.
cake that was
That is real.
Thanksgiving 2 years ago.
It is real. I love it.
But no, but that's true. And I had to realize that about myself. I'm like, why do I have the same pair of shoes in 8 colors? Why do
Yes.
the same? But now when I do like something, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I, but then when my mom passed and I went to go clean, I'm wrapping this up. When I went to go clean out her storage, I found a lot of meat in her storage. My mama had so much stuff, brand new stuff unopened. She had 3 storages of
Wow.
brand new furniture. But my mama was bedridden. Why do you have a grill in your room? Why
Ah,
a
No.
KitchenAid mix, that $499 mixer? But I bought it because that was her love language, and that's my love language. Giving and gifts is her love. So I made sure she had it, but it was still in the box when we went to go pack up her room.
yeah.
Why do you have a recliner? So because in her head, I'm getting a house, but she never got one. But you had 3 storages full.
Wow.
But I did the same thing. I never could regulate the fact that the old Joy is not homeless anymore.
Mm.
I never regulated the old Joy is not as fat as she was before because
Yeah.
I still had that image that I was
Yeah.
320 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness can go a long way, and it has to hit in every area. And the main thing about forgiveness, I promise this is it, is the fact that you have to be, and this was what Reed taught us back in Breakthrough. He said, true forgiveness is the willingness to forget.
Yes.
And when I was able, and the situation came up, matter of fact, with Ninja, the man who beat my mom into heart attack, he was real abusive to my mom, and I hated his guts. But I let him come to her funeral, and I talked to him afterwards. And I didn't cry, didn't feel no type of way, because I could have sniped him and took him out. He old, I could have got him, but I didn't. But that was a level of forgiveness that I didn't even know I had got to. Because all I know is, sir, when I was 12, you beat my mom into a heart attack, and I had to lay there with her until the ambulance came.
Mm.
You stabbed her. You did this. You kicked me out the house. You punched me in the back of the head. That's all I had.
Mm-hmm.
But then forgiveness. I'm telling you, forgiveness will go a long way.
Okay, now with you starting that off, the next
Yeah.
question, and I'm going to start with Nick's first. How do unresolved childhood manifest in adulthood, and what are some common signs women may experience?
Oh, easy. When you move in with somebody. I mean, to be honest, I've been in many relationships. Um, Living with somebody teaches you a lot about yourself. Everybody was raised differently. Just like MJ said, some things you feel are normal. And a lot of things that you feel are normal, other people don't feel are normal. I grew up, for example, I grew up in a house where I knew that there was love, but it was not necessarily love as in hugs and kisses and being around each other and being up under each other. It wasn't, I came home and the first thing I did was run to a relative and hug them. I knew they loved me, but that's not something I do. So to, show emotion with somebody, you're in a relationship and you care for, I show in different ways. I show by me cooking, I show by me cleaning, I show by gifts, but just understanding your love language and understanding, the way you were growing, the way you grew up, and who you are today. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't learn to be a different way, because you learn something new every day. You might like it, try it, be open minded, but it does happen. Yeah, it does happen.
Okay, Amber, and then MJ, then me. Can I just say poet? Because I'm not even used to. Then poet, then the coach.
Okay, so do me a favor. Ask the question again because it sounded like it was like a two-part question. And
It
I
is a
want to
two
dive.
part.
Okay.
So, how do unresolved childhood trauma
Mhm.
manifest in adulthood, and what are some common signs women may experience?
Rejection and abandonment is what I got from that question.
Yes, baby.
Okay.
Speak on
So
it.
growing up, I I I grew up in a household, multiple households. Let me just go there, okay? But in each household, I craved one thing. But of course, as a child, I couldn't put a name to it. I couldn't put a title to it. But going into an adult, I realized in my relationships, if somebody walked out that door and didn't say goodbye to me, I never thought I didn't think if they was going to come back or not. I always went to what did I do or what I did not do, right? So I found myself as an adult cycling these emotions over and over and over again based off of that memory that was attached to those actions growing up. Feeling like I was the whole rejection part of things, being multiracial, going into a room of me and my sister actually had this conversation as we were getting closer and kind of like having these moments of learning one another's backgrounds and how we were raised. But walking into a room that might be full of Caucasian people and me looking the way I look, I always felt like I was rejected because of how I looked. In most cases, it was the truth because they didn't know who I was or what I was. It's like they like to call it. And then I would go home to an African-American family of my godmother and her family, and I would just look around and like, I don't look like y'all either. So who am I? So in each room, I felt a sense of rejection. So then growing up, even in being a nurse, and I said, you know what? When I grow up, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to help these people get away from those feelings that I've endured. I find myself speaking to these children or even the adults that may come into the emergency room or in rehab, and they're like, you know what? These are the feelings I have, and this is why. Most nurses or my coworkers, they're always, even the providers, they'll look at me and say, how did you tap into that? This person, we just had them on the floor. They didn't even want to talk to nobody. It's because I'm not looking at them to reject them or to make them feel that their feelings are not valid. Their trauma responses are not valid because they very much are. So when you sit in that space and you learn how to sit in that space and you learn how to communicate through those emotions, you're also able and willing to be in that same environment and listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Most people don't like to hear certain traumas because they feel like they're going to be triggered. In some cases, you are triggered. There's some situations that I might talk about that might give me that gut feeling of back in the day. But going through it and coping through it and then remembering the tools that even me, myself, sat on somebody's couch, very uncomfortable, and having these conversations, like it's not always a them thing. It can be sometimes a you thing. And it's a you thing because of how you chose to respond in the process. So as an adult, I carried those things on, and it's even even today, I'm still working through some things when it comes to feeling like that might be an abandonment issue, or did she just pretty much tell me that I wasn't good enough?
All right.
Again, a sense of rejection. And then I have to sit in that space and say, you know what, you better quit playing with yourself. Quit playing with yourself. That's that.
That's so good. Um, so I feel like I'm a bit of a like when it comes to how we carry our trauma or how it shows up as an adult, like how Amber was talking about rejection. My self rejection showed up in a really light voice. I wasn't a very, I spoke a certain, like with a light voice. It showed up in me not wanting to be the center of attention, but my personality is very much put me in the spotlight. Okay. But that self rejection was like, oh my God, everybody's going to reject me. I'm not good enough. But also, one of the major ways that my trauma has shown up, and what I see in as an adult is physical pain in my body. For years, I carried this enormous pain in my hips and in my legs, to the point where it was hard for me to get out of the bed. It was hard for me to move, and I lived on ibuprofen and things of that nature. And it wasn't until literally late last year when I started doing Reiki, because as I started meditating, praying, asking, okay, what's the root of this pain? How can I heal it? Because it's not just based on I got a fat ass. It is also, baby, you got some trauma that I just couldn't get out, like even with therapy. And so therapy showed me, okay, your root chakra is blocked. You need to deal with that trauma. So being SA, being abused physically, having all the holding on to the unforgiveness, as Joy was talking about unforgiveness, all these things trapped in my body. Then I found, the trauma manifesting in panic attacks, shortness of breath, not being able to breathe. I could be having, and let me tell you something. If you all have ever experienced where you could be having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden your body is like locking up.
Mm-hmm.
That conversation could be about how much we love peanut butter and jelly with a little bit of milk.
That milk triggered you.
And baby, now I can't breathe. A bitch is like, wait, hold on. And so then having to talk my body down, like, then and so I realized, oh, this is all trapped emotions, trapped trauma. And another thing, and this is just to help people out there is, I didn't want men touching me. I didn't like the touch of a man. I didn't feel safe.
Girl, me neither.
Because her body belongs to God.
Right. She's a eunuch. A eunuch like Jesus. And he was, I found that. Let me not go there. But anyway, Jesus was a nigga too. All right. So anyway, realizing that because of what I had experienced as a child with certain men in my life, that even though I was dating men, I never felt fully comfortable with them physically. And so a lot of that, so it was like I would get chills under my body, and I would say, but I like the pain. So what's wrong? I want it. I want it. I want you. I know we got some. I like it.
Joy.
I tried being with a woman and it ain't work for me. Just like some of y'all probably tried to be with men and it ain't work for you. It was just, Joy, hush your mouth. It's protein. It's protein. It's protein.
MJ, on what you're saying, a lot of trauma that is undisclosed. A lot of times, it is attached to that as far as, you know, different sexes and things like that.
Mhm.
I know there was a time when I couldn't, the men in church would embrace me, hey, sis, give me a hug, and the smell of they skin, right? Would put something in my whole body. And some days I left nauseous. I even remember telling Shay one day, like, this man sure was handsome. And he asked me out. And I was like, I thought about it. I thumped about it. And then I smelled him and I got sick. And I knew then, like, okay, you say you did the work, but you really haven't done the work.
Right.
And then that gave the opportunity to do the work in that era, right?
Yeah.
So that is the space that we sometimes, and not even just in LGBT, like it happens across the board.
Yes.
There are women to this day that
Yeah.
are heterosexual, and there's some that are hyperactive, and then there's some that's just like, please don't touch me, or later like a pin cushion, if you will. And that's just what it is, because they have desensitized their physical being to compensate what's going on in the mind, right?
Yes.
And that's a very dark place to be in. Thankfully, there are women that have gone through these things at young ages as adults. There's women that I sit across the table from that have suppressed it, didn't even remember it happening. They thought it was something they seen on TV until one good conversation, and they go to bed and they wake up and they are terrified because they realize this is their story, this is their reality, and now what do I do about it?
Yes. Yeah.
There's
Oh, my bad.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because we bury those bones and we don't want to believe that something like that has happened to us, and that we, you know, to your point about the smells and the experiences and how we physically react to the trauma, you know, that's happening, and then that's occurring. So yeah, I was just gonna, I'm with you.
There's a book that if you are in like a mental health space, I'm sure you've heard over and over again, but The Body Keeps the Score. And then there's another book written from an African American perspective called My Grandmother's Hands. And they both talk about how we hold on to trauma in our body. And it's not just our trauma, it's generational trauma, it's all of these things. But like for me, a lot of that manifested in shirts. Like I had a whole like praise break moment this morning because I have on a turtleneck, and for at least the past 30 some odd years, I refused to wear turtlenecks. I had a traumatic event as a child where someone choked me and like I couldn't do it. I couldn't wear anything tight. And I realized this morning in putting this on, like I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
That's been the work that I've done with my therapist. But for me, the bigger piece is being in a relationship with someone who makes me feel safe means I can do things I've never been able to do before. So like when we talk about how childhood trauma manifests, it's like you said, there's certain people like I just don't feel safe around. It's, you know, trauma changes our brain chemistry, especially when you are young and your brain hasn't fully developed. When all of these things are happening, you don't know what it is. Like Amber was saying, I used to have this dream that I realized later in life wasn't a dream. It was that repressed memory. And like when it came up that this actually happened, and I went to my mom, she was like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. It clearly was if I'm still dealing with this now. Like you not wanting to acknowledge it doesn't make it any less real for me. So when we're thinking about like how it manifests, it's like you said, fear of being touched, inability to wear certain things, having certain smells or certain sounds be triggers. There's certain things I can't hear on TV. Like I, in the past, would leave the room because I couldn't hear it because it was a reminder. Certain smells, if someone was walking down the street and I smelled it, I would go in on myself. So when we're thinking about like what that looks like moving past that is letting people in, doing Reiki, like doing EMDR, like doing the work, letting those things come out of your body, right? What looks like addiction is not always addiction. It's covering for those things that we never got to heal. And it manifests as addiction. It manifests as taking ibuprofen, or when that stops working, because eventually it does, moving on to something stronger. But we don't talk about that, right? So when we're thinking like the big picture, it's have we named the thing? Have we let it be real so we can deal with
Yes.
it? Once
Yes.
if we let it just sit, we don't think about it, we don't address it, we don't deal with it, it still has control. And like my motto in life is I don't give power to dead people or dead situations.
I like that.
That
Mm.
situation is dead. Even if the person is still physically alive, I'm not giving them any more power over my life. So they are dead to me.
Mhm.
Their
That's
power,
good.
we have buried it. I have mourned it. I have grieved it. I've grieved what I didn't get to have because of them. And I'm also celebrating what I get to have now that they're no longer in my space. So like it's all of those pieces, the acknowledgement, the like the forgiving yourself
Forgiving. Yeah.
and acknowledging like this happened.
Mhm.
This is not going to have to define me for the rest of me.
Yeah. Coach.
So I have a really good gift for disassociation. I can disassociate from anything. And I know that. And I accept that. But what it did was, and there's a wonderful woman, Dr. Doolin. I'm not gonna call no names, but Dr. Doolin helped me see where the trauma that I never dealt with was abandonment and rejection. Because I disassociated with it because there was experiences that was so good with the people I was given to it didn't matter that I wasn't it didn't matter what I was experienced. So it started from the beginning. My mom and them, I was my mama's birthday gift. She got pregnant with me on her birthday. Plain and simple. They wasn't ready for no child. She gave me away but took my cousin in. Okay, I'm with my great grandma. That's fine. Then I know. Then we go up to, growing up. I'm the black one, so I was never nobody's choice. But I was somebody's choice, so I could live off that. But growing up, I was never nobody's choice because my daddy didn't want me because I'm his first child. He didn't want me. My mama didn't want me because she wanted my cousin. My grandma, her mama told me I was too black and too fat. That's why she wouldn't pay for prom. That's why I went through all of that. The church barely wanted me. Then when I went to work, I used to get so much attack from my employer. Then it was just like I always went through life with this abandonment and rejection that I was nobody's choice. And I used to put me in a place to where I used to always have to explain myself. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but you believe them over me, even though I was in the right. You believed them over me. And it always took me away from situations. And even in relationships. I was never nobody's first choice. So how it showed up with me, I tried to do everything in my power for you to pick me. I made sure that I kept everything I could right that you would pick me. Same thing with my mama. I bought you gifts so that you would see me. I tell my family all the time, I made my dad love me. I made sure I remembered him on his birthday, on Christmas, on Father's Day, whether or not he returned the favor or not, because I needed you to know that I still existed. So it wasn't until recently that those things came uncovered because I had moved past. I'm like, I had a good life. I was with my great grandma. She raised me. I had my uncles. I don't have these issues. But subconsciously, I was abandoned. My mama gave me away twice. And we was raised as sisters, even though I know that was my mama. She still loved my sister over me because she was prettier than me. My own mama told me, she didn't tell me I couldn't sing. She told me I can't sing because my voice is too deep. So I never did. Even though I can sing and I can play the organ. So everything, it was like nobody saw. So what I did was I made it so much about me when I could. I overdid it in degrees. I overdo it in certifications. I overdo it in learning things. I overdo it because I had to prove myself to myself. But then now I'm in a totally different mindset because not only was I able to go through counseling and recognize those things and see that they actually are there because I disassociated from it. So they're actually there. But now I realize that is, and matter of fact, going to the church because that can help psychologically detour us anyway, because we get in church and we thinking, oh, God loves me, God loves me, and you still feel unloved. So I had to change all of that about myself to start seeing myself. And this is a shameless plug. In my first book, when I grow up, I want to be just like me,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to become everybody something for you to see me. I never saw myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I want. I didn't know nothing. You can say, and my wife can attest, I would buy you the world and I would go to Burlington, which I love Burlington, by the way, but
Okay.
I would go to Burlington and spend $3 and I'm satisfied. I would take the least of you and give you the best of me,
Mm-hmm.
and had no problems with it. There's not a relationship I've been in to where they didn't get a house, they didn't get a car, they didn't get this. Whatever you need, I get nothing. Not now, because I wouldn't be married, but not now, but back then. But that's the life that I didn't know, that that was from abandonment and rejection, that I had to become so much of who I was
Mm-hmm.
to get you to like me or love me. And then now I realize how great I am now. You can't tell me nothing. But
Exactly.
it was recently that I realized, girl, you do got those issues. You just looked at it differently because you had a great grandma that loved you to life. You had a grandfather that named you. You had, you had all of these good people, but the main people that was there didn't give a damn about you. And I had to sit with that.
Wow.
And I'm gonna wrap this up. But even at my mom's funeral, it was a lot of hurt behind it. But the main thing is, I didn't know if I did good enough. And I dealt with that years, even up recently. Did I do good enough to even make sure that you was buried right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still wasn't, I didn't know. And that, like how Nick said about that I love you thing. You knew they loved you because they fed you. You knew they loved you because they was there with you. Not, they can do all kind of stuff, but that was the way you knew love.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I love you. You're pretty. You're my daughter. Even with my daughter, I used to sit there and rock her and be like, I wonder if my mama used to rock me like this. I wonder if she used to sing to me like this. And I had to go through a whole undumping of layer of abandonment and rejection that I had got even existed, because I know how to make ice cream out of lemons, but I never did it for myself. So it showed up in me in so many ways, not just physically, but in the way it did physically. Because when I looked in the mirror, who am I looking at? I didn't like what I saw, because in my head, I was black,
In your mouth.
because my grandma told me I was that black. So all of these years, I literally thought I was so dark. You're black like your daddy. And I'm like, now I look at it, I said, we're the same color. Then when she told me I was too big, that she wouldn't pay for me to go to prom, I look back at those pictures. I was 16. I was in the size 16.
Mm-hmm.
I was that fat. So I had to go through all of that. And it was, again, just recently, within the last couple of months,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And it's been a unloading and an undumping to where I'm able to let stuff go. I'm able to give clothes away that still got tags and stuff on it.
Amen.
I'm able to give
Amen.
shoes away. I'm able to, even when I go to and somebody said, or Shay said it today, when I go to the Dollar Tree, I forget that I got 15 things of toothpaste in here, but I come back with 15 more.
Well.
And I literally forget that I have a surplus, because it's out of a need of, I may not have this. I may not
Mm-hmm.
get in. And it took over my life. But when I dealt with it, my money began to change. Everything around me began to change. And I saw myself in a different way. And it's like, even though it's a lot more, but it's enough.
It's enough.
Joy is so crazy. My grandmother's nickname for me was Tar Baby. I'm the darkest person, and I'm the darkest person in my family. I was
Are
Tar
you
Baby.
serious?
Oh,
And like now, in like retrospect, I was like, I don't even understand how I allowed that to be a thing. But my grandmother grew up in a time where she was too dark for her family. And so by default, that meant I had to be too dark too. Like,
Mm.
and it took me probably up until about last year to realize like I'm barely brown. Um,
Barely.
like,
Okay.
I'm just coming into my summer shade, so it's a little bit different.
I'm working.
Like,
I'm working on mine. It's a good bronzer. I
look, you
feel you.
catch me in January, I can't say nothing. Shay, around our birthday, it's a wrap. Like, I can't even pretend. But like in my mind, I've always been super, super dark skinned. And then growing up around predominantly white people,
Mhm.
I am. But like it's that context. Once you get out of a certain space and you can see for real, I was like, so I've just had this stuck in my mind for 30 years for what? For why? And my grandmother's been gone, what, 5 years now? Oh, no, a lot. Be 8 years. And like I still hear her voice when I get ready to go somewhere or do something. I'm like, I don't have to listen to that.
Yeah.
But like just like you said, letting go of those things that you've held on to so tightly. Too many degrees, too many certifications, too many this, too many that. You know, if don't nobody else know, I know. Right? Like who am I trying to prove something to? So now it's what do I feel? What makes me feel real? The whole never being chosen, never being picked, having somebody that picks you,
Man.
it
Mhm.
changes everything. You
Changes everything.
from
And,
when you met
and
me to now,
and defend you. Because that's what friendship
met
Yes.
me,
is.
Yes. And
chose
Defend
me,
me.
defend.
Like stand up for
defend
me.
me to anybody. And you
Yeah.
can't tell me nothing about life.
Man.
Yeah.
Nothing. How
Wow.
do we get
Right.
there? Finding letting somebody in.
Yeah.
And at the
But
same time,
oh,
challenging
wow.
you, making sure that they're still challenging you. Like, yeah, as soon, yes, making sure that they are accompanying, complimenting you, and making sure that they choose you and everything else. But yes, making sure that they don't agree with everything you do. Making sure it is some challenge for you to grow, giving you the space to grow with them. It's a plus. And that's what friendships too. Don't have to be relationships. That could
right.
be your own personal tribe.
Getting out of that echo chamber will change your life every time.
Oh,
Mm.
that's
People who only tell you yes don't have your best interest at heart.
At all. At all. Bree, you want to answer that question?
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of questions.
All right.
One thing I
So
want to say is,
go ahead.
I, that literally, this is an awesome panel of people, and I did not get a chance to actually engage with you all the way I wanted. So, if y'all give us the honor to come back again, I know we're going to switch panels weekly, but if this particular panel would give us the honor to come back again, I would love to discuss some important points that y'all made um, as y'all was talking. But for me, it was in and out. But the things I did hear, I sorry about that. I do really want to address some things that you all said that were really
Oh,
vital that I think that we need to touch on a little deeper. So so we would love to have y'all back again if y'all would just
you
come
don't
back
have
in.
you don't have a question you want
But
to ask now?
um,
I know your
not
mind
really a
running.
question, but like to point out some of the things that they. We're gonna talk when we gonna talk when we get the phone. We gonna talk when we got this phone call. Not really a question, but like really, like for me, I've been coaching and speaking in for 35 years, and I didn't realize until my mother passed in 2021 that I suffered from parentification,
mm.
and I was codependent.
Mm.
And my therapist was talking, and I was like, "Well, how can I be there? It makes sense. I'm codependent. I've been taking care of my sisters and brothers and my mother since I was 14. So, like Joy said, I could easily do for anybody else on this planet, but I could not do for myself. So what I
Yeah.
chose
Mm.
to do these last 3 years, 3.5 years, was to be single and celibate. And I decided to fall in love with myself. Because relationships, whether it's parent relationships, friendships, or we tend to want to be validated, or like you said, receive love from other people, but we cannot do that same thing for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I took the route of falling in love with myself to see how it felt for me to love me, regardless of anybody else around me. And I told my daughters, I said, give me some grace, please. Because really, like Joy said, and like I think what Amy said, like really, these last 3.5 years, I have been finding out who Hakina was. I knew who I was as a daughter. I knew who I was as a mom slash daughter. I knew who I was as a mom slash sister. I knew who as I was as a friend, as a spiritual sister. I knew all those things. I can do that like breathing. But I was not really clear who Hakina was. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we deal with issues and we go through things, we got to take a moment to find out who we are. And my
Mhm.
main thing is, I'm gonna say it repeatedly. You're gonna hear me say it all the time. There's no healing without truth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you're familiar with shadow work. So I went into a space of shadow work. Shadow work is when you go inside yourself and you deal with yourself and you deal with your
Yeah.
demons, your issues, your insecurities, everything that is stopping you from being the best version of who you are in the spirit. So I think that, like I said, there's some things y'all said and I heard here and there that I would love to revisit. Because I think,
Mhm.
some points y'all made need to be heard a little bit deeper. They need to be, put out a little bit deeper. I read a few comments. And, tonight was an amazing night, even though I didn't get to do what I wanted to do.
Can,
But I did think it opened a lot of questions and it said a lot of things that people did not even realize that was
Mhm.
trauma.
Yeah.
And having this platform that my sister, decided to ask could we have is needed. Is needed not just like here and there, is needed all the time. We have to create a
Yeah.
village that we feel safe to say, you know what, I had low self-esteem, or I overate, because like we need a platform where we can feel safe to be honest and authentic and not
Mm-hmm.
feel judged and know that we're not alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all. I'm
can I
sorry, but
say
I
one
appreciate
thing?
y'all so much.
Go ahead. We're not ending yet. We're not ending yet.
Oh, but real
Go ahead.
quick, so Hakina brought up
No.
about shadow work, and I don't want nobody. I want to say this because I don't want nobody to be afraid. When she said dealing with your demons, we're not talking about you growling or running.
Right?
Right.
That's
She's
good.
talking about,
Clarify it, yes, because
yeah, we're
the
talking
people need
about
to know. Yes.
distorted emotions. That's what it is.
Yes.
Demon is
Thank
distorted
you, brother.
emotion.
Thank you.
It's way that you have perceived things in an incorrect way, because if you do believe in God or a higher being, we know that all things for him is good and
Right.
we were created
Exactly.
good. That was the
Mhm.
first thing he said. And after
Mm-hmm.
creation, he said it was good. So anything that is a demon is not a physical or a spiritual monster with wings and horns. It
Right.
is a distorted emotion
Mm.
that you have no control
Mm-hmm.
over.
Yeah.
So you may think you're possessed,
Yeah.
but you're
And,
not.
and
It's just the way that you have not
yeah.
learned to
And
reconstruct that emotion.
Mhm.
yeah.
Bro,
Mm.
you
And to go
ready?
even further to make what she's saying is clear. When I say my demons, I mean my ego self.
Yeah.
Not my spirit self. That I believe, I feel, I want. That side of us that we only see, that allows us to understand just us and not the perspective of who we are in a community, in a society, and in humanity. Period. So when I say
Yeah.
shadow work and demons, like she said, it ain't no, it's not as scary. It's that version of you that is the, because I know I would say, we all are light and dark. That's just reality. How
Mm-hmm.
you want to word it or feel it, what comes for you. We all carry both sides of who we are. So doing that is not, it's approaching that part of you that that is has your hidden issues. Those things within you that you don't think that nobody else know about. Those things that you have buried deep down inside of you that you may have even forgotten about.
Yeah.
Depending on how it affected you and how it came to you, you might not even
Mhm.
remember that it's even there.
Amen. You
I
gotta
remember, I
yeah.
remember one day just getting ready for the day, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but I remember brushing my teeth, and 2 years ago, brushing my teeth, and I looked up, and I'm telling you, I did not know the person I was looking at, and it was only me. It was literally
Wow.
like I have been asking God to
Mm-hmm.
reveal,
Mhm.
right? Show up. I didn't know, of course, I didn't know in how he was going to do that, but I'm going to tell you something. I was very ugly. I'm going to just be very transparent. I was a very ugly person in that mirror. And I'm not talking about, I felt like I was having an off day of physical appearance. I
Right.
literally seen myself. I was not pleased. That day, I remember coming out of the restroom, sitting on the edge of my bed, and I was done.
Yeah.
I felt like I had been beat up internally because, and all I could do was just, I kept calling on Jesus because it's what I asked for. But if I seen that, I can only imagine what people were seeing and how they were feeling. I was
Yeah.
mean. I would My tongue was very sharp. And I still have moments. The Lord is still working on me. Uh-huh. But but my trauma and the things that I had gone through, instead of going through them, I attacked people
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Okay. So if I felt rejected,
Baby.
you might come at me and be like, you
Mhm.
pretty, I want to get to know you. Oh, for real? Let's talk. And then 2 days later, you just looked a certain way and I was done.
Yeah.
That was unfair because I fed
Yeah.
into it. I fueled that, right? I filled their tanks. And I knew that it wasn't gonna be a long term thing, but those were pieces of who I was as a person through my trauma that 2 years ago I was able to see. And it was very distasteful. It made me sick.
Yeah.
It made me want to be a better person. It made me want to be a better mom. It made me want to be a better
Mhm.
sister. Like, I wasn't the best sister. And that's because I had resentment because my sister had a different life growing up with my mother, who's Caucasian, than I did. And that
Mm.
wasn't her fault. That wasn't her fault. And,
Yeah.
and honestly, it wasn't mine either. It was just the circumstances, how the cookie crumbled. And at this point, we're adults. We got to stop making excuses for it. And I had to stop blaming her because she didn't play a role in it, and vice versa, because she had resentment for me too. That it's an unfortunate situation when your two siblings are resentful to one another with not knowing the level of trauma that both occurred in each
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I
So
want
Exactly.
to
this
Yeah.
say,
cycle
And I
is hard.
hold on, I want to
yeah, and
piggyback
I
off of
thought
what
everybody.
Amber said. I
Go
want to
ahead.
hold on one more second break. With abandonment, I literally the divorces that I've had started because I felt abandoned and rejected, and my way of showing up was I'm gonna find somebody else that's gonna make sure they see me because I
Mm.
want to be seen and I'm not being seen, and I've never been seen, so therefore I want to be seen, and y'all not seeing me, so I gotta go. It ain't work out for me, so I end up having to take the steps to actually heal myself because
Right.
it wasn't benefiting. I was hurting people and hurting myself, but that was the moment you made me feel like you did not see me, respect me, or you was abandoning me, and I said I needed you, baby, I was gone. Ghost. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
Amber, I want to tell you, I was your sister.
Mm.
Meaning my older because my parents, I'm the only child of my parents, but they each had marriages before me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I became an adult in talking to my father's children, because I was raised with my mom, so closer to those siblings. And in talking to them, one of my sisters said, I resented you because you got the side of our father that I
Mm.
didn't get. And that's why she didn't come up. She was like, that's why I didn't come around as much. I pretty much, because I had this art against you. And then it wasn't until later in adulthood that I realized you couldn't help what our daddy did. Like he, the choices that he made. So I'm just saying, when you said that, I was like, wow, this is what
Yeah.
this is what my sister was feeling, as well. And so I understand that perspective. And then also when you talked about looking in the mirror and knowing yourself, I for me, doing out external things was what made me acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being the best worker, being the best friend, even at my own detriment, dressing nice, looking nice, always having all these things externally together. But then I also started like doing intentional mirror work and realized, girl, you ugly on the inside. Cause you
Mhm.
nasty,
That's
you
it. That's
backbite girl. You really
that's
don't
it.
like her. You really don't like this person that you calling your friend.
Mhm.
It's just different things like that. I did what I thought, even denying myself of the pain I wanted, because I wanted to be like Jesus. And understanding that that Negro getting his and got his before he left. He was getting some. Don't let them that Bible fool you.
You know, it's what. In addition to that,
I
you
mean,
touched
I mean,
on it as far
honestly,
as
Amy,
like.
thank you for doing that because
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bree.
you can go ahead and finish.
No, 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 no,
No, no,
no.
no, go
I
Because
ahead, go
I
thank
don't
ahead.
thank
think
you,
we
Amy,
can
for
hear
saying
you,
that
so
to
I
her
want to
because
hear you.
No, go ahead, Bree.
now I want to say thank you for her to, saying that to her because that was the point of what I said earlier. If we can ever get everybody in one room to have these conversations authentically and honestly, we will see how we are connected. We will see how we're sharing the same experiences, same pain, just different scenarios. Because I have two sisters. I'm the oldest of all my siblings, but my two sisters did not like each other because I raised my younger sister and then my father got remarried and he had two other children and my dad got to raise them with his wife, so they didn't like each other because my sister I was raised thought that my dad had a better life over there and she thinking that we had a better life because you with your sister and you ain't got like it was a whole so I had to get them together to have a conversation because they didn't like each other simply because they felt they had two different lives and one was getting more than the other. So I applaud you
Mm.
for saying that to her because we need to understand and we need to be in a space where we can actually have these conversations. And you know what? You'd be like, I see that. You know what? I didn't know that. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand that because that's the only way we actually are going to be able to heal and put things out there. And that's why I thank each Joy for being honest about her real that's her real life. Amy for
Yeah.
being honest about her real life. Everybody has been honest about who they are. And Amy made a good point I wanted to point out earlier. She talked about how in mental health you understand that childhood affects children mentally. So each
Yeah.
one of us before we ever became I said no sweetheart, that's who you became. That's who you are. So there's a point in our childhood when each one of us did not know anything. Regardless of how much we think we know now, there was a point in our life where we did not understand, we could not comprehend, and we gathered things and we understood things and we acquired knowledge and our habits and our way of thinking from the people around us. And the things that we took that we agreed on and things that we took that we thought were right, it became who we are. To figure out
Mhm.
who we are, this is how we're going to figure out who we are. We're gonna start putting things on the table. We're gonna start understanding things that don't belong to us. I always tell people, as a child, we're giving things without our consent. We never agreed to this trauma. We
Mm-hmm.
never agreed to this pain. We never agreed to feel less than or confused about who we are. We were given these things without consent. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way to gain control over that is to take control of where you are now. So I
Well,
think Brittany, and the reason I want to do it again because Brittany in the chat in the comments, she said that she loved it and to do it again. So we definitely gonna do it again because I really
Yeah.
do want to get to the point where we actually can, engage with our people in the chat room as well. Because reading the comments in the chat room, this has been impactful the way we thought it was gonna be, and we need to make sure that we continue to do that and understand that. So thank y'all for being authentic. Thank y'all for being genuine and putting everything on the table because this is what's needed. And we have made some good points. Like I say, I have notes in my head,
I know
so
you
like
did.
points I want to
I
touch
wanted
on because like I think
Oh,
yeah.
I wanted to say something. I'm sorry, Bree, if I cut you off and being disrespectful. But I wanted to say that sometimes, the way I was raised by my grandmother. And my mother wasn't always in my life, but I was raised to hate her.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? I was raised not to give her a chance. It
Mm-hmm.
was it was seeds planted in me against my mother. And I had to face the fact that at one day I'm gonna have to give this woman a chance. Now, it could be the truth, they could be telling the truth, or they could be not. And it came
Mm-hmm.
out the complete opposite.
Mhm.
Like, I really, even though we were brainwashed with things, and we do blame our family for things, and things did happen, we also have to give them the opportunity that and the chance to prove what they are today. Because again, that's still the past.
And
And
I'm
that
gonna,
was a lot of healing as well, because I'm not a mother yet,
right.
but I'm my mommy's baby. I'm her baby girl. I have an older sister. Hey sister, I know you watching. I have a other sister that grew up with her mother,
Mhm.
and we had two completely different separate households, but went through the same thing.
Which
So
keep in mind, even for people that was raised in the same household, you still got a different experience from the
You
same.
do.
Yeah.
right.
So it's
Absolutely.
Hello?
like me and
Hello.
my sisters, everybody have a different impact from their mom. And I'm like, y'all
Absolutely.
remember that? They were like, we don't remember that. I'm like, that literally, we was all in the same house at the
Don't
same
make me feel crazy because I
right.
know I know I
So
seen
I
it.
said I was there. I was there for that one. Like I
right,
saw
Period.
that. You
right,
didn't see it?
right. And then too, you
Yeah.
like what Nick said, even in that level of forgiveness, even though you were they put in your mind to feel a certain type of way, it could have just been that time frame your mama could.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they didn't
Mm-hmm.
experience growth. That's one. Two, and everybody, just because they kick out a kid, don't mean they was ready to be in that place of a parent.
That's
At
right.
all.
And
At
you,
That's
all.
you,
right. Or
you
that they were even capable
Hello?
of it. Not
it's
even just about being ready, just being
like
capable.
the way that we
Mm-hmm.
impact Abby and Xavier is different from them 30-year-olds that we got, them 29-year-olds got.
Mhm.
Same thing, Amber, I can say about you. The way that you
Ab-
deal with baby girl is different than how you deal with Kai. Because
Absolutely.
you're older, you deal with people. So we have to get in our mind that one, things do change. Two, it was how you perceived it, because how you didn't do it. That
That's
caused
right.
the person to act that way. We can't blame everything on everybody. And
That's
then
right.
some things are self-inflicted, and we have to be okay with saying, you know what,
Hello?
Mm.
I did that.
I
Because
did
me,
that, and
I can't
yes,
sit
and it's my
and say,
fault.
right, like with me and my mama, I knew my mouth was an issue. I knew that. I said what I said, when I said it, when I wanted to say it. And it was two times that I said something
Mm.
to me, and she said, "You're just so cruel."
Mm.
And I sat with that and I said, dang, yeah, I was kind of mean. And then even it was another time that she just looked at me, and it was just the way I said it. And I don't have no respect to person. And especially when I'm at that point, I don't
Mhm.
see it at all. But I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to also bring up the fact that something else that we need to keep in our notes is the fact that if you do have a relationship and, in, in spirituality or with God or whoever you decide to worship, your experiences of distrust and abandonment, you do know that resonate over in how you deal with God too. Because I went through a whole time where I didn't realize I didn't really trust him. I was so used to doing stuff on my own. I never had to call on him for nothing. I appreciated him.
Mm-hmm.
But I never had to call you to help me get a car because I can go do it myself. I
Right.
never
Or you
had to,
call on them and you just because it's out of habit. It's how
yeah,
you were
it's out of
taught.
habit,
You
but
better,
you really
Lord,
don't
thank
trust
you,
him.
can you help me with this, and not realizing that he really did show up. It ain't all just you, but in my mind, I did the work. So why am I asking you to help me?
But see,
I
that
went
was the
through it.
thing. I did the work. It was like I would say,
Mhm.
"Oh God, I blessed me with a car." Next thing you know, I done wrote 15 checks to go get the car. I did it myself, and then I didn't realize that until I got older. Till I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't even trust God because I didn't trust my daddy. I didn't trust my mama. No, y'all didn't want me, so why would I think somebody who I can't see wants me?
Mm.
All of that resonated over into my whole relationship with him. No matter how much I loved him, I still stood off before I got my God consciousness. I stood off away and said, whatever you give me, I'll accept. It's okay.
Yeah.
Versus standing in, no, I'm your child and I want the best from you. And I expect the best from you because I couldn't expect that from my natural parents. So him being my spiritual father, my spiritual mother, I couldn't expect the same thing. So it was like, I didn't know how to be in his presence. I didn't accept that, oh, he is good. No, I didn't know that because I never experienced a good because I wouldn't have cried as much. I
Mm.
wouldn't just lay there and be hungry. So I didn't know how to resonate that over to the love of God because I'm like, I'm hungry. We're living in a house with no roof. We're sleeping on two day beds pushed together. We're
Hmm.
sleeping off hunger. So it was like, and then so when you going through that shadow work and that mirror work, you have to deal with it completely because you've probably missed so many opportunities of actually feeling God's love or experiencing it because you didn't know how to recognize it because you never had it.
Yeah,
So
Joy,
you
I didn't come out of that.
that wasn't there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't come out of that until I was forced to sit in a room. Let's be very clear. I was almost 400 pounds, and I always tell people when I chose life, and those layers, meaning those pounds were shed, each layer, each pound,
Yeah.
some kind of something had revealed itself to me. This
Yes.
is why you picked up that pizza. This is why you were eating that Wendy's $5 biggie bag before you went home and ate dinner at the table.
That's good right now.
Girl, a little hungry, a little hungry. But then those layers are down. Then you feel like, okay,
Yeah.
now I done lost the weight, Lord. Okay, so now what? Because now my faith, I've done the works of my faith, right?
Yeah.
And getting that put back in God, right? And then boom, cancer happens, right? And then now I'm stuck with all these IVs and I can't talk, I can't see, I can barely walk. What else do you have left? It was in that moment, girl, you better get your life right and get the focus in and realizing I am who I am. I am God. And you don't get to question because I've still in these times I have still shown up. In these times I have still provided. In these times I haven't failed you. And those are those moments that I have to sometimes go back to when I'm doing the mirror work and I see, okay, girl, you tipping over that line and getting back to that person again. You need to get back. You need to come back.
And you don't be, but that's a whole nother subject for a Thursday night. All right, I want to start wrapping it up since we're going to do a part two. We can get into some more steps of what we need to do to get through the trauma. So to go in that direction, hold on, I'm gonna mute you. So I want to ask this question. It's gonna be the last question, and then we're gonna pick up if everybody's okay with coming back to do a part two to actually do more of the steps of therapy and all that stuff, which we definitely need you here, poet, to go through more of the therapy stuff. So the question is, what are some of the first steps a woman can take to begin her healing journey from childhood trauma? Now I'm gonna say for me, believe it or not, my first step was actually being a lesbian because, yeah, that was my first step. Now let me explain. Put your face back. Let me explain.
Hold on.
So I remember my grandmother telling me one day I wasn't gonna be nothing but like my mama. And my mama was bisexual from relationship to relationship, completely unstable. And I did not want to be like her. So even though at a very young age, I knew that I like girls, I could not be like my mama. And then as I got older, I'm like, I can't, this is what I want. It's joyful, but this is what I want. This is what
Wait,
I want to do. Go on mute. I'm talking. So this is what I want. It made me feel like this was who I am, and I want to embrace it. And I embraced it. And I told my mom, and she was so happy. Like, I mean, but I had to forgive her so that I could go ahead and live in my truth and be myself. And I can honestly say, once I started to live in my truth and started peeling off the layers, this is the first marriage, and I've been in two that I have not craved, desired to step outside of it when things get wrong. Then therapy was definitely a big help. But the therapist I have now, like right now, when I tell you the stuff, the homework she gives me makes me know the layers that are still there. The stuff that still tick me off is still coming off. That was my second step. Third step was me living in who I was as a mother to my kids when I wasn't healed. And telling them that it's okay when they say, Ma, you remember when you did XYZ? I don't remember, but I'm sorry. I don't remember, but I am sorry. Whatever
Yes.
it was, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I did. I'm sorry. No, I know the stuff I did do, but if it's something else I forgot, I'm going to make sure I acknowledge them because I don't want them to have to write me a letter in their 30s, 40s, or 50s and me give the wrong response. I'm getting the responses I need for myself through myself, and I'm going to make sure they get the same responses. So hopefully, as they continue to grow, they won't have to repeat the things that I had to go through to get to 45. By the time they're 45, they can say they're further on. Okay, so now anybody can go first.
So for mine, and it's so weird that you said that, but I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it out there. Because of the trauma that I endured when it came to sexual at a young age, and then even in my teenager years, I found safety in women. Okay. I found that they couldn't take in the manner in which the men had in my life, right? So for me, I would go ahead and say living in the lifestyle of a lesbian, right? All these years. And then I was okay with it. I was okay with it because I knew that this is who it was. This is the decision I made. It made me happy. Although even living in that space and in that lifestyle, I was still physically numb and I controlled the narrative. Anytime with any level of intimacy was more mental than anything. And up until, again, 2 years ago, I decided, okay, when I asked God to reveal, I'm okay with who I am. Understand that. And what comes out my mouth, I'm very much aware what's about to come out my mouth. And I've never been in a closet. I never had to be in a closet because I was okay with my trauma, what it looked like, and my safety, right? Now, doing the work, I can hug a man. And I was open to God giving me a man that provides safety, that provides stability, that loves me for me and my past and my trauma. And not only that, that I had to sit in that space, but I had to find the right therapist that focused on trauma specific therapy. See, people they don't understand that there's different layers and there's different types of therapy, right? You can always say, sis, I'm gonna refer you to my therapist. That's cute. And she can tell me I'm depressed and put it on my MAR and give me some pills and send me away. But did you tap into the reason why I feel this way? Did you ask those therapists the questions, what are you properly skilled in? What other layers, what other credentials do you have to help with this type of trauma?
Yeah.
Because you can't sit on the couch and tell me how I should be okay with the smell of a man or a man's touch if you've never been SA'd.
Right.
So that is the steps I took. And I mean, it's worked for me so far.
I'm gonna go next just in case my phone because it's blinking. So I don't know if it's gonna go out or not because
Okay.
y'all freezing up and y'all wasn't before.
Go ahead, Bree.
But I mean, but you're absolutely right, and that's one thing that people need to realize when they say they're in therapy. There's a difference between having a therapist and a trauma therapist. So that's highly important when you know you're going into look somebody for trauma. So I'm glad you pointed that out, so to make people know that, because sometimes people don't understand that their therapists, they deal with them like I do, like spiritual coaching and success coaching, but and with the emphasis on dealing with trauma because that's what my major is going in. But you have to be very careful when you're dealing and explain your trauma in therapy. Make sure that you have someone. But what I wanted to say was, my answer to that question is, and it actually I was going to say it anyway because I was going to say going back to Nick's, but you asked the question, so it all fit. What made me actually be able to heal was when I got pregnant with my daughter, and I began to realize that I wasn't perfect. Like I had some stuff going on. I'm like, you got some stuff you working out, but you about to be a mama. So I sat with that for a while, and my spirit kept telling me like, it wouldn't leave me. And I realized what God was trying to tell me was to pay attention to my own mother, meaning sometimes we see our parents and we only see the parent, we only see the mama or the daddy. We never connect the fact that they was a whole person before they became your mama or your daddy. And if they happen to not have dealt with their issues or not even understood their issues before they became your mother or your father, it's going to affect how they are as your mother and your father. So I began to pay attention to that. Like, I still got stuff to work on, and I'm about to be a mama. And it pushed me to not want to pass down the same things, but it also made me look back and forgive my mother. Because before I ever came along, she was a whole person outside of me. She had her own issues she was dealing with. She had her own issues with my grandmother she was dealing with. She passed away, still wanted to be validated by my grandmother. She passed away, still wanted to be loved by my grandmother. So it wasn't the fact that she maybe didn't love me. She didn't have the things that I needed to be the woman that I am today. So I said, God, I have three mothers, the one that birthed me and loved me and the two that actually raised me. And God loved me enough to have given me a whole three mamas just so I could make sure I'm the woman I am now. So when looking at our parents, sometimes we got to step back and realize that before we came along, they had a life. Before we ever entered into that space, they had their own things they was dealing with. And sometimes it's not a reflection of how they feel about us. It's all that they have to be able to give us in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was it.
Agree on that. It's so interesting. Our parents love us to the best of their ability. That does not mean they love us the way we need to be loved. And
Mm,
understanding that can shift so many things, because especially once you become a parent, you look at your child, most of us look at our child and think, I can't imagine not loving you completely with everything in me, giving up my life for you. And then we look at our parents who are like, meh. Like, I feel very strongly that there were many times my mother looked at me and went, hmm. Like, there are things that she said to me that I never should have heard as a child. But when I get to the point where I'm looking at how I got to where I am, there's a suitcase I carry with me, right? And I've carried this with me my whole life. My mother packed that suitcase for me as a child. What she put in that suitcase doesn't mean that's what has to stay in that suitcase.
Yeah.
So I can
mm,
take out the things that I don't need from her and put them back with the things that I do need.
I
Like,
like that.
if you are like me and you don't unpack for a trip, from a trip, until you get ready to go on the next one, like, you don't need to keep everything in that suitcase. You take out the stuff you don't need and refill it with things you do need. And we have to look at ourselves that same way. Like, we don't have to hold on to things. If it's no longer serving you, you don't have to hold on to it just because it's there.
right.
Just because someone put it there doesn't mean you have to keep it there, right? You have to give yourself permission to, like Joy, throw it away. For me, hand it away. For whomever, let go of it. Just because it started in your suitcase doesn't mean it has to stay there. You were not at your final destination yet. You still have room to move stuff around.
Yeah. Um, I'll share one part of my process has been to, well, um, okay. There are many thoughts going through my head in this instance. But one thing I will say is through your unpacking stage, take it one piece at a time, right? Because I know for me, I have been hyper vigilant, hyper ready to, I want to attack it, I want to get it over with. But sometimes you may stay in one, to Amy's point, like may have many suitcases to unpack, but you might need to stick with one for a longer period of time, because if you go through it too quick, you miss the feeling and the emotion, so that you can like deal with the pain. And I think that's a part of like when Joy was talking, and Hakina was talking about, dealing with your shadows and things like that. I think that's what helped me through my process, was actually sitting in my pain, sitting in the feeling of the anger, sitting in the frustration, sitting in the disappointment. And secondly, do not throw away or put away that little girl or little boy or little them, little they. Do not, they are the purpose, they are a part of you. And this is something that I heard long time ago, is that where your trauma is also where your light is. You left something there. I left something there. When my boyfriend in college assaulted me, I left a piece of my tenacity. I left a piece of my confidence with the trauma. I left it in the room. And so what I realized is, when I go back to address it, I'm not just going back to address it and shut the door, but I'm going back to bring the good with me. And that part of me, that part of you, is also going to help you, because that part of me that gets a little anxious, I have to address the anxiety, because it's an alarm system going off saying there's something that is making us uncomfortable. So instead of avoiding the anxiety, I go, okay, talk to me. What is it? And then I can tell her, that little girl in me that gets anxious, I can tell her, oh girl, you just ain't had none in a long time, so you afraid, right? Or you're mistrusting of people, So let's get to know this person a little bit more. Or it could be, you right, stranger danger, get away. What you feeling, what you sensing, what you seeing is real. And so that's something that has helped me heal, is not just pushing past it, but acknowledging, accepting, and saying, okay, reparenting myself to being the 40 plus old woman. Look it, I know I'm 26. Hello. But
Really?
reparenting her and bringing her, to an adult.
That was one of the questions too about reparenting, but we'll touch that later next time. Go whoever's want to go next. Joy.
Next, you want to go or you want me to go?
It's up to you, Pops. Which one?
So I'm gonna say something that may be unpopular. If I had to choose all over again, I would still want the same mama and the same daddy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I 100% believe that everything, every magical part of me, and whether you think it's quirky or not, whether you don't think it's magical, it's so magical to me, is the reason I have it because of them. And now, granted, did I have to maneuver, do some things to better understand it and how to put it in its correct place? Absolutely. But I've had so many great and beautiful experiences with them to where I could still appreciate who I came from and the life that I had with them, even though, yeah, it was wrapped up in abandonment and rejection. That's well and good. But I do know that through that growth and maturity, I'm able to give my ashes for beauty. So everything that I went through, I would not be who I am. Because even though I didn't know who I was, I know who I am now. And
Yeah.
I'm continually learning. I'm continually growing. But if I didn't have the penny that I got, because the penny that Angie got and the penny that Jen got is not the penny that I got. But I can weather a storm. Give me a screwdriver and a butter knife, and I promise you we'll have a house and I'll be fishing with it at the same time. Because that is something I learned from her.
Mm-hmm.
Is with my dad, he involuntarily taught me how to be so self-sufficient. Now, granted, growing up, it was interpreted a different way, but I'm my greatest commodity. And then just everything in life. And I'm like, yeah, that was a little wrong. Okay, yeah, that could have been a little bit different. But what did I learn from it? What did I gain from it? What did I experience from it? Yeah, and then even now, okay, it's maybe a little fear in this because, like, even with my daughter, I get a fear when she's around other people that's not around me because of what I had to go through. But that was a door I had to open because I remember being left with boy babysitters. So I have to make sure that I'm mindful of those things, but I refuse to choose another pathway into this life if it wasn't for Laura Faye and Thurman Young,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever his name is. But that's today. But that's it. I am so happy to be the person that I am, bruises and all, traumatic experiences and all. Trauma, I love every bit of it as I work through it because it wasn't, we always say, oh, he's not going to put more than you can bear. I was designed to hold this weight. And it's so many people don't realize that God blesses you based off of your ability, not your potential. And the more you have, that means he trusts you because you got more ability to handle it. And I take that and said, just imagine how many people I'm going to be able to touch, whether it's one by one or at the multitudes, because of what I experienced. I may not have experienced what it is to be with a man. Oh my God, I almost vomited. I may not know what that feels like. But there's people that I'm going to be around that don't know what that feels like either. We don't have those. I don't know what it is to be a crackhead. I don't know what it is to have a crackhead mama. I don't know what it is to be in a closet. I don't know what it is to be shamed for being gay. So there's things that I can say I have so much beauty in, but then I can say, okay, even with the hurt, even with the ashes, he said that he would give us beauty for our ashes. And I stand on that, that everything about me is because of who I was brought into this world by and the design of life that I went through, even the parts that I chose. So everything is beautiful. And I'm so happy. And even this morning, I woke up grateful to say, you know what? I have the ability to think of solutions that can be patented. Some people can't even get their thoughts together. I whether if I have I don't care if I got $20,000 in the bank. It's some people that don't. I'm blessed to have that. I'm grateful because it took this to get that. And that's
Yeah,
all I'm gonna say about that.
you better preach. Next, your turn.
Just like Joy said, one thing that has helped me is stop feeling guilty and ashamed for who I am. Yes, I love God. I love the Lord with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind. And I'm also a tarot reader. Yes, I'm over 300 pounds. And yes, I wear belly shirts. So it's going to be, it was times where I walked through a party with a see through dress on, just showing my confidence and crying in the car. But I went back out and did the same thing because I like what I wear. I continue to be who I am and just learning, going through life, seeing my ups and downs, knowing that because of the God I serve, everything gonna work out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So all the lessons that I'm going to continue to learn, I'm ready for it. And all the lessons that I learned, I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, I
Girl, and
love
your face card don't lie. Girl,
you.
your
Okay, and don't. Okay, well, as we Bree, you got anything else you want to say?
I mean, yeah. I mean, tonight, there's some things that you all said, like I said, are very essential. You made a point, Joy, about our journey, and I agree with you. And I always say that I wouldn't be able to bless people the way I do had I not had the experiences. And to not be long winded, but I had experience coming out of a marriage, and it was a tumultuous marriage, and but it was, yeah, the worst I had been. But the funny thing is, coming out of it, when I wanted to be balled up in a ball, God kept sending me women to speak to, the coach, the mentor. And, and God was telling me in that moment, it ain't just about you. My people are hurting. But what it also taught me at the same time was when I came out of, that space, God said, now you can speak. Because now when you speak, it will be authentic. I have been
Mm-hmm.
mentoring and coaching and, dealing with young women, a long time, but I had never had the experience of what they were going through at the same time. So, I got put me in a situation to where I actually had to actually deal with exactly what I was coaching and being a therapist to people about. So God said, yeah. So now when you speak, it will be authentic. Not as it wasn't before, but now I not only can talk to you from an intellectual point, I can talk to you from spirit to spirit, heart to heart. So I agree with you. We have to be able to look at the things that we've gone through and understand that they are part of the journey. They're part of the knowledge. They're part of the wisdom. They're part of the things that we need to grow. If you don't ever go through anything, then you don't even know how strong you are.
Yeah,
I'm always quick to say I'm power. I know I'm power. I don't mean that arrogantly. I know I'm power, but I know I'm power because I've gone through things that have allowed me to understand that I am power.
yeah.
So yeah, so I agree with that.
Okay, next, you got anything you want to say before we head to close?
Mm-mm, I'm good.
Okay. Look, all hearts and minds are
So
clear.
I hope tonight helps to heal people.
I want to
Thank
say
you, everybody. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you.
thank you.
yes, and if y'all could text me what date
Yes.
and time is best for y'all for us to do a part two. If you would like to come back, hold on, Bree, I got mute you. Hold on. I don't know why it's echo only when her thing come up. But if y'all could text me a day and time that y'all would be able to come back on so we could put something else together. Um Also, I want to thank every single one of y'all when I text every single one of y'all, including my wife, because she be sending invoices, y'all. But even when I text every single person, first Bree, when she wrote her book, and I want her to want her to say her what the name, her title, her book and stuff is. But when she wrote her book, like I said, it was something I wanted to do, but it was her book that literally was like, this is the time. Like this is somebody that can connect and y'all can connect together. Now we've been sisters for almost 9 years, I think, in our sorority. But to be able to have people that's like it's just a powerful thing to have like-minded women around you, period. Or people that's doing something that you want to do and you can learn from. So I want to say thank you, every single one of y'all, for responding to my text. I ain't had to harass y'all or stalk y'all or be a bully like I typically am when I want stuff done. I appreciate that. Y'all can talk about that in your own trauma classes, whatever. But no, seriously, I want to thank you all for being here, for being the voice, being healers, help healing, doing the work for yourselves. You are all 100% appreciated from the bottom of my heart. Like, I swear, if it's anything you need me to do, I will be there, just for the fact that I only had to ask y'all one time and y'all was here and made it work. Um, and if it's anything y'all want to close with, we can start with Megan and work our way to Coach, then to Poet, then to Amber. Even if it's a shout out where people can find you, your businesses, like let's, because it's still money on the table. We don't leave no money on the table, so we can't leave without doing that.
I'll just say one thing that I'm an advocate for is, us making sure that we have someone outside of our immediate circle to speak with, like a therapist, a coach, because it is so important. Because I have girlfriends where I've said, hey, here's a therapist, I think maybe some of the conversations you need to go deeper with someone on, and they will tell me, well, I don't even know what I would talk to a therapist about. And I think that is what we as Black women, we tend to just say, well, I have nothing to talk about. But it's because we numb ourselves so much that, or we spiritualize everything. And sometimes you just need someone to give you the logical understanding so that you can continue your journey. So my thing is, please talk to a therapist. Even if you don't know what you're going to talk to the therapist about, I guarantee you, and Amy probably can attest to this, if once you step into that office, you're going to realize there's some stuff you need to fix. So, yeah.
Coach.
I appreciate you having me. I'm not going to charge you today, but I really do thank you for allowing me to be a voice on your platform. You can always look me up at iamjoyyoung.com. But I want to say to everybody, you are so beautiful. You are the perfect image of God in every form. And I hope when you see yourself and you look at yourself and you're speaking to that inner child, that you remind them, you so perfect, you are God. And allow that little girl to heal and to meet you at your highest place so that you can experience all of the good that you are warranted and deserved in this life. You are wonderful. I know we hear, oh, you wonderfully made. I'm beyond that. I'm wonderful because of who I am. And that's it.
Okay. Poet.
I usually say this in my DEI trainings, but the more I've thought about it and the more work that I've done, I've realized it applies to you, to us individually. You're not responsible for your first thought. You're responsible for your second thought and your first action. And what I mean by that is we internalize so many negative messages about ourselves. I think everyone said it at one point. I wasn't this enough. I wasn't that enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. That first thought is a lie. That first thought is what other people have told you to believe. That second thought, that correcting thought is no, I am wonderful. No, I am beautiful. I'm confident. I'm all of these things and I'm going to act like it. So if you don't think about anything else I said. You're not responsible for your first thought. You're responsible for your second thought and your first action. Thank you so much for having me, sis. I appreciate y'all. You know, between you and Bree and Nix, y'all call me. Even if I don't want to, I'm going to say yes. So
I
just
appreciate
don't use it against me. Don't use it against me.
it. I appreciate it. Amber.
I just want to just say thank you. I'm always down to do this because I think it's very the work you're doing is reaching people. The work, Cola and you all are doing and Joy and it's just it's it's needed, right? And I'm just thankful to be a part of it. I do want to just touch base on the fact that my pastor a few weeks ago preached on something during morning prayer, and he said you protect your gates, your ears, whatever that entry is, you need to protect them at all costs, and that goes a very long way because you got to be mindful of the people that surround you. The things that they're pouring into you may not always be good, and it can always go back and trigger the inner child. So you got to protect those gates, and always just remember that nobody can write your story better than you, and don't let nobody be the author of your story. And again, thank you, and I wish you all well. And until next time.
Yeah, thank you. And I got to give one more shout out for my sorority who presented this and allowed us to present it through them. That is Alpha Pi Delta Sorority Incorporated. Got to put that in there, okay? Because we the best. All right. Well, thank y'all again. Have a good night. And until next time, y'all be blessed and work on that inner child.